I wanted to share my experience participating in something pretty special that happened recently in the Mothership RPG community. Graham Richardson, a third-party Mothership creator, organized and hosted the Triptech Tri-Panel Game Jam on itch.io, and it turned into one of the most collaborative and supportive creative experiences I've been a part of. The format was focused on creating tri-panels, basically a game module like an adventure or a resource, all fitting 2-page front and back, and meant to be folded like a brochure. What made this jam incredible wasn't just the creative challenge of trying to fit everything onto 2 pages, but the sudden temporary community that formed around it. Graham set up a Discord channel on the official Mothership server where several dozen creators came together, most of us first-timers when it came to making Mothership content, along with a handful of veterans who were incredibly generous with their knowledge and encouragement. The energy was infectious. People were sharing ideas, offering feedback, collaborating across projects, and genuinely supporting each other's creative visions. By the time submissions closed, the Game Jam had 39 entries. All participants got to judge and rank every entry, which created this interesting democratic process that resulted in a definitive ranking from 1 to 39. Today, I'm going to walk you through the top 4 tri-panels that rose to the top of those rankings, showing you what made them stand out and why I think they're deserving of their top spots. And then I'll share my own entry, which landed at number 18. I'm including it not because of where it's ranked, but because I'm genuinely proud of what we created, and I want to highlight the amazing contributions from my collaborators, Loden, who created these illustrations, and Akuma, who designed the map. 2 things to note before we dive in. 1, I will be spoiling each of these scenarios. It's kind of impossible to discuss a 2-page module in any amount of depth without showing the 2 pages in full. And 2, I will leave links for all of these tri-panels down below. They were all free for the duration of the Game Jam, but some creators might have plans to sell their tri-panels for a small price. You'll just have to click and see where each of them are at. So, alright, let's dive in and explore what made this Game Jam so special, starting with number 4. Mother Sleeps Beneath by Archon demonstrates exactly why tri-panels work so well for Mothership scenarios. The setup is simple. An underwater mining platform has suffered a catastrophic accident, trapping workers below and awakening something ancient. There are 3 objectives: repair, rescue, and retaliate against a big underwater monster. There's also a layer of tension where exposure to an alien microbe slowly transforms humans, giving them gills and resistance to deep sea pressure. The tri-panel format really shines in how Archon uses the timeline and the zone structure. The progression mechanics, with their emphasis on 6-hour rounds, oxygen management, and decompression requirements, create genuine operational pressure that mirrors the claustrophobic nature of deep sea work, obviously a perfect analog to working in the vacuum of space, where Mothership normally finds itself. The repair checklist gives players clear objectives, while the escalating timeline ensures they can't solve everything methodically. Notice how keywords are in bold in a different color here. This makes scanning and referring to the information extremely easy. The big bad whale-like monster meant for the finale is handled with restraint. Rather than making it an inevitable boss fight, the scenario presents multiple approaches: combat, negotiation through offering, or even finding ways to coax it back to sleep. And the fact that PCs eaten by the monster might actually survive adds a bit of dark humor that I think a lot of third-party Mothership modules are missing. The presentation on this tri-panel is extremely clean and functional. Since the information in tri-panels is usually dense, it's important to make that information accessible at a glance, and you can see that here in spades. The zone map is clear enough to navigate while maintaining that sense of isolation and depth that the scenario requires. If there's a weakness, it's that some of the NPC motivations could use another line or 2 of development, particularly Supervisor Hunt's corporate scheming, which feels slightly underdeveloped compared to the rich environmental storytelling. But within the constraints of the format, Archon made smart choices about what to prioritize, and the scenario delivers exactly what it promises: a pressure cooker situation with genuine stakes and multiple viable solutions. The Doom of Verdun Prime. Lone Archivist's third place entry tackles the sort of classic sci-fi scenario of an asteroid on a collision course with a populated world, but elevates it through some clever structural choices and a solid twist that reframes the entire situation midway through. Lone Archivist, by the way, is probably one of the most prolific creators of third-party Mothership materials. Every time I see the name, I expect the design and polish to be at a pretty high level, and it's not a surprise that their entry came in third on this game jam. Anyway, the real-time countdown tracker is this tri-panel's strongest mechanical innovation. Having the asteroid's approach increment every 30 minutes of actual playtime creates genuine urgency that can't be gamed or optimized away. It's a simple but effective way to maintain tension throughout the session, and the visual tracker gives players constant awareness of their dwindling time. The militant conservationist, called the Sword of Aguilar, works well as an antagonist because they're not cartoonish villains. They're well-meaning conservationists protecting what they believe is the last member of an extinct species. The revelation that the egg is actually a psionic consciousness rather than a literal egg provides a meaningful pivot point where players must reconsider their approach entirely. And the fact that violence near the entity will shut down negotiations adds tactical weight to every encounter. There's a lot of restraint shown in the map design. The asteroid's layout is purposeful rather than sprawling, with each area serving a clear function in the narrative. The crystal veins that react to human presence and the increasing warmth near the core create atmospheric touches that don't really require extensive description to be effective. The tri-panel format works particularly well here because the scenario scope is naturally constrained. You're on an asteroid with a ticking clock, so the boundaries feel organic rather than artificial. The NPC motivations are clearly established, from Clara's incompetent calculations to Brennan's insider knowledge as a defector. While the scenario presents multiple potential solutions, negotiation, destruction, diversion, it doesn't provide much guidance on how those negotiations with a psionic entity might actually play out in practice. The weight is on the GM to flesh out and make those negotiations and potential success actually meaningful and plausible to players. The presentation is clean and functional, though the asteroid map could benefit from maybe a little bit more stylization. The stat blocks are comprehensive without being cluttered, and the inclusion of multiple Warden's notes shows a good awareness of potential running challenges. This is just a tri-panel that clearly understands its constraints and works within them effectively. It's not trying to be the most innovative thing you've ever seen, but it delivers a complete playable experience that makes good use of Mothership's tension mechanics and cosmic horror themes, all in that classic black and white aesthetic that is almost like a calling card for the Mothership RPG. Welcome aboard Pontus Station. This second place entry from Ogre College takes the approach of playing Mothership horror completely straight-faced while dressed up as a family-friendly theme park brochure. The tonal dissonance between the cheerful marketing copy and the mounting body horror is pretty clever, but it makes total sense because these tri-panels are physically brochure formats in the first place. The presentation here is this tri-panel's greatest strength. The bright colors, promotional coupons, and the corporate speak creates an immediate sense of wrongness that sets players on edge before they even encounter the actual horror. And some of the details are legitimately funny to me, like competitive wages, okayish benefits, and the morose genetically engineered key lime slime emitting guest services organism. The horror generation system is very well done. Rolling on multiple tables to create a unique abomination each time helps to ensure that no two runs will feel identical. The mutation combinations can produce wildly different threats. The station layout works well as both a functional dungeon and a believable theme park. Each area has clear purpose and atmosphere, from the rancid restaurant where Chef Oyaki cooks hypnotically to the arcade commandeered by Star Scouts, and the Something Sinister Happens table that triggers every 2 rooms explored maintains tension without feeling arbitrary. Where the scenario particularly succeeds is in its NPCs. Each crew member has fallen to the horror in a different way. Huxley, floating in breathable water, consoling a 2-headed beluga, Laura 600, violently enforcing fun. These are characters whose corruption tells tells a story about the intention of this nightmarish theme park, as well as what it has become. I think maybe the weakest point in this one is its victory conditions. While there are clear threats to overcome and survivors to rescue, the path to actually resolving the situation feels less developed than the setup. The horror's various hungers provide interesting tactical considerations, but the end game feels somewhat open-ended. The production values deserve special mention though. This genuinely looks like corporate promotional material gone wrong. The color choices, layout, typography, and illustrations all show a strong sense of aesthetic and readability. And being able to cram in little touches like the job posting and convention advertisement just to add to the world building is no small feat when it comes to trying to design a tri-panel. What reflects from within, taking the top spot, Corin de Vries and Prashi M demonstrate exactly why psychological horror works so effectively in Mothership's framework. This is a scenario that understands that the most effective scares come from turning players' own character investment against them. The setup here is that players are sent to investigate a deep space mining operation where an ultra rare metal is being manufactured into mirrors. But these aren't just mirrors, they're gateways into a parallel dimension that plays host to personal desires, but which all feed towards a self-serving alien entity. The idea that actions in the mirror world affect the real world through invisible forces creates this constant tension where players are never quite sure what is real. If the GM does it right, the players will really not be able to discern what's real and what's from the mirror world. What elevates this above clever gimmickry is how thoroughly the authors thought through the implications of their central conceit. The illusions aren't just random scary things, they're specifically tailored to each character's regrets and trauma, requiring players to engage with their character's backstory in meaningful ways. The choice to obey an illusion to reduce stress versus resist it and gain stress creates genuine moral and tactical dilemmas. The facility layout is economical but effective. Each area serves multiple purposes. The smelting facility with its molten ore acts as a liquid mirror. The manufacturing area where recent orders only show mirrors. I think the environmental storytelling here builds the mystery without overwhelming the players. The entity itself is handled with restraint. Rather than being a traditional boss fight, it's a psychological manipulator that works through the player's own emotional vulnerabilities. The fact that killing it traps everyone in the mirror world forever adds genuine weight to combat as a solution. Winning the fight through violence means potentially losing everything. The secret objectives are something I'm always fond of, personally. They tend to breathe a lot more dimensionality to a session by occupying the players with multiple goals and more complex choices. The production value is not something that I think impressed me as much as the other entries, but the writing and design on this one truly make it special. The author clearly understood how to maximize psychological horror in the span of 2 pages. If there's an actual weakness here, it's that the scenario might require more prep work than some groups are comfortable with, particularly around developing PC backstories and handling the psychological elements sensitively. You really have to have some commitment and buy-in from the players to actually make this one work. Smash and grab. Okay, the last tri-panel I wanted to show you was the one that I wrote myself, with title letters and illustrations by Lodin and map design by Akuma. I also did the vector illustrations of the gear. The setup in this one is that PCs are tasked with retrieving as many valuable relics as they can from an asteroid before it plunges into a star. The company wants the relics and they will give you credits for whatever you can free from the rock that those relics are encased in. The catch here is that you have just 3 hours of real time to do it. The twist is that at the start of the 3rd hour, a guardian of what turns out to be a sacred alien temple confronts the PCs, and it tries to defend its relics using violence. I wanted to focus more on immediate physical and temporal tension rather than psychological horror, and the objective is greed, pure and simple. Keep drilling to get more and more precious relics to turn over to the company for precious credits. The jackpot being a relic worth 2 million credits, enough to buy a small ship. The real-time drilling mechanic requires that PCs use both hands for a duration of 2 to 3 minutes, depending on which special equipment they use in parallel. The less special equipment they use, the longer it takes to drill a site to completion and get the randomly chosen relic. Since players would each individually start and stop timers many times throughout a session, I built a simple stopwatch website where you can add up to 8 players and start and stop the drill timers independently. Although I didn't really intend for it, Akuma's map style ended up being very evocative of 16-bit Sega Genesis RPGs, and that sort of fit the more arcadey, video gamey feel of this scenario, where you're just trying to rack up as many credits as possible and get out alive. I was happy with Loden's illustrations as well. They're sort of dark and grimy, like this crummy asteroid that the PCs find themselves on. Essentially, this is just a focused heist with supernatural complications. It didn't try to be the most innovative thing in the jam, but it delivers on an active, frenetic session of Mothership. I think if I had to give myself some criticism, it would be that I should have made space for some clear player objectives and secret objectives. That would have gone a long way in creating structure and meaning for the players. Merely accumulating credits may have very little meaning for anyone just playing this as a one-shot. So in light of that, I've gone a bit outside of the bounds of the tri-panel form factor and added 5 victory conditions as well as 5 secret objectives that GMs can assign to players. It will come as a separate sheet if you download this tri-panel. Participating in this game jam was one of the most rewarding creative experiences I've had in RPG creation. There's something magical about working within such tight constraints. You're forced to cut away everything that isn't essential, which leads to surprisingly sharp, focused design. Every word has to earn its place on the page. I would encourage any aspiring game designer to try and write a tri-panel at least once, and preferably early in their design journey. The 2-page format is an incredible teacher. You learn to be ruthlessly concise with your writing, to prioritize the most important information, and to think carefully about how layout and visual hierarchy can support your design goals. And unlike larger projects that can feel overwhelming, a tri-panel is manageable. You can experiment with layout tools, try different approaches to information density, and actually finish something without getting lost in mission creep. And working with Loden and Akuma showed me the kind of creative synergy that only happens when you put yourself out there and work with other passionate creators. The temporary community that formed around this jam proved that the Mothership scene isn't just about individual creators working in isolation. There's real appetite for collaboration and mutual support. The Discord channel was buzzing for weeks with people sharing techniques, offering feedback, and celebrating each other's successes. That's the kind of environment where great work gets made, and I'm excited for whatever Game Jam organizer Graham Richardson puts together next. Mothership in general has proven to be remarkably fertile ground for this kind of creativity. It's become a model for how bright indie RPGs can shine, not just as best-selling products, but as launch pads for endless creativity and new ideas. Mothership's straightforward, flexible framework gives creators room to experiment, while its distinctive sci-fi horror tone provides enough structure to still feel cohesive. And I don't know, there's just something about Mothership that invites bold, creative choices. If you're on the fence about trying game design, seriously consider starting with a tri-panel. Pick any system you love, give yourself the constraint 2 pages, and see what happens. You might surprise yourself with what you can accomplish when every element has to fight for its place on the page. I've left links for all these tri-panels below, as well as a link to the Game Jam organizer's own page. Let me know what you think about tri-panels and if you've ever made one yourself. Thanks as always for watching. I'll see ya.